Hello and welcome to another lecture of Government and Politics. I am Muhammad Ahmedul Islam, lecturer, Department of Law, World University of Bangladesh, and today we are going to talk about Political Theories Part 1, Conservatism, Fascism and Nationalism. This lecture has been produced as part of the online learning system of World University of Bangladesh, Department of Law. So let's first begin with conservatism. Conservatism is a political theory that believes in traditional family values and individualism in the running of a society. So conservatism is the political system, or it is actually a value-based political theory, which says that family values are something that need to be protected in order to properly run a society. Conservatism seeks to conserve or preserve the good ideas and mechanisms that make a society great and focus on their gradual development rather than uprooting them altogether. So in the modern times, we are seeing a lot of political theories and a lot of political movements that seek to uproot the previous system or completely destroy the previous social structure in order to bring about a new future, in order to bring about a new kind of reality. But conservatism says that it wants to preserve what is good, and it wants to support the structure that has nourished the society and that has brought the people of the world where they are. So conservatism is a sort of political ideology that actually tries to preserve the good things of the culture, good things of the society, and tries to improve on that. Conservatism, due to its emphasis on tradition, is usually hijacked by religious fanatics to gain popular support. So, in many countries, we are seeing the movement that the conservatism is being hijacked or is being misused by religious fanatics, because conservatism follows the social principle or the traditional principles to preserve the family values, to preserve the social values of a country, and the religious fanatics see it as a potent means to use the political system or use the political idea to further their own objectives of a religious state. But conservatism and religious state or religious ideologies are actually in many cases are different. They're not the same. But in many countries, like in India, the religious factions of the Hindu fundamentalists, they are actually hijacking the conservative movement or the conservative values, and they're using the conservative values to impose their own Hindu nationalistic ideas on the people. So let's look at the core principles of conservatism. So there are a few core principles that every conservative person or conservative ideology follows. Number one is individual freedom. So conservatives put a high emphasis on individual freedom and the individual dignity of a person. Then number two is limited government. Conservative principles are based on the fact that it is a society, it is a family that runs the family, that runs its own society, and the government should have the least amount of pressure on the private person. Then rule of law. Rule of law is a straightforward thing. It says that laws are there to be abided by, and it should be followed by all. And then peace through strength. So conservative principle actually advocates for peace, but they say that we should not appear weak, or we should not become weak to appease to the peace, because if we are weak ourselves, people who are different than us will take it as an advantage and they will subjugate us. So we have to be strong, and we have to implement peace by being strong. And then fiscal responsibility. So fiscal responsibility is a state function where conservatives say that state should be responsible in spending. They should not spend on various social humanitarian measures. that will in a long term put a detrimental effect on the society. For example, conservatism say that in terms of healthcare, people should have the choice to buy or to purchase their own healthcare system, or they should be able to decide which doctor they should go to, and when, and how much money they should pay to the doctor. And in certain countries, the social healthcare system actually dictates which doctor you should go to and how much money you should pay to the doctor, and it's all fixed. Conservatives say that it should not be fixed. And then free market conservative principle is also based on the free market principle, which says that marketplaces should be free of government intervention, and it is actually one of the core principles of conservatism. And then human dignity is actually part of the individual freedom, and it says that human beings are free and they should be able to follow their own religion, follow their own path of happiness, and government should not dictate what kind of work that person should do, or what kind of education that person should take. And these are actually the core principles of conservatism. Conservatism takes different shapes and forms in different countries. Conservatism in India is vastly different from conservatism in the UK. So if you look at different countries, we will see that conservative, the word means a lot of different things, because in India the conservatives means nowadays the Hindu nationalist, but in UK conservatism is like mostly like liberalism with uh, fiscal restraints. In general, conservatives are more religious, skeptical of government interventions, slow in adopting new social changes, and highly protective of cultural norms and teachings. So here I have provided that a conservative movements, the general characteristics of conservative movements, which is they're more religious, they're more skeptical of government intervention, and they're in general slow in adopting new social changes, because social changes may bring some problems which we yet do not know. So they're prone to disbelieving any kind of new scientific discoveries and any kind of new social policies that may or may not change the societal fabric fundamentally. So conservative movements all around the world are gaining momentum in response to rapid digitalization and social transformation. So in the 21st century, we are seeing a revival of conservative movement in all across the world, in Africa, in Europe even, where conservative religious parties are getting more votes than usual. And it is happening because people are seeing that the governments are infringing upon their own lives, infringing upon their liberties, their freedoms more and more, and they think that conservative movements are the ones that will emancipate them from the tyranny of the government. But in general sense, we can say that if the conservative movement is non-religious, or it is not it is not influenced by religion, then it is okay. But if it is influenced by religion, religion itself will impose upon the people, and it will be far worse than what is the current secular governments are doing. So people have to actually see what conservatism has now transformed into, and try to actually divide conservatism and religious fanatics, so that it is on its own and the religious fanatics are out of power. So now let's talk about fascism. Fascism is the rule of one man or woman with an iron fist. So usually we see that fascist governments are revolving around one person, one charismatic leader. It is a political system where the state takes every freedom from its citizens and controls every aspect of a citizen's life. Liberty, freedom, and political plurality are non-existent in a fascist system. So if a country is ruled by a fascist government, you will see that there is no freedom for the general people. There is no liberty, there is no political plurality, which means that there are no political parties. There uh, are no rallies, are no processions, uh, and the state propaganda is the only propaganda machine in the country. Italy under Benito Mussolini, Germany under Adolf Hitler, and Spain Francisco Franco are famous examples of fascism. So, in Italy, there was a dictator named Benito Mussolini. He actually started the modern fascist movement, and Adolf Hitler, he was a Nazi uh, German, but his movement was also a fascist movement. So now let's talk about the indications of fascism. Creating a personality cult. Fascism starts with a person. Fascism starts with a personality cult. A person so charismatic, so revered by other people that people think that this person can do no wrong. And that actually starts fascism, because that person thinks that he or she is close to the God and he or she can do anything, and the people will not say a word. And then promoting xenophobia masked as patriotism. So patriotism is one of the core concepts, or one of the core material that is used by fascistic leaders, and they say that they're implementing patriotism, or they're promoting patriotism, but actually they're promoting xenophobia. They're promoting the hatred of other people. They're promoting the hatred of the neighbors. We see in our country, in even our country, that you are either anti-Pakistan or anti-India. In Bangladesh, people are mostly divided into two broad uh, categories. Either you're anti-India or you have to be anti-Pakistan. Why should that be? Why should we not love our neighbors? Because we are most probably the same. We are actually the same. We come from the same human lineage. So why should we hate others? The hatred is actually masked as patriotism, the hatred of others. Identifying a common enemy and blaming everything on that enemy. So this is also a characteristics of fascist government, and it says that oh, you are suffering from this and that. Our economy is suffering. Our political situation is bad, and there is someone else to blame. There will be someone. There will be a group of people. There will be a country or a religious group that will be blamed for all the sufferings, all the wrongdoings of the state. For example, in Iran, we see that the Iranian dictators, they always blame Israel for everything, every kind of bad things that happens in Iran. Israel is automatically blamed, and the Jewish people, which is a religious group, which is an ethnic group, this ethnic religious group is always blamed for everything that is wrong with Iran. But they are not going to ever admit the fact that they have been in power for such a long time, from 1979, and they are not doing anything good for the people of Iran. But the people are, blinded by their emotions, blinded by their religious doctrines, and they will only see the enemy, but they will not see what their leaders are doing. And then emphasizing on military enrichment rather than social welfare. So this is also a fascistic tendency, in which we will see that the country focuses on military more than it focuses on the well-being of the people. People are dying on the street for food, but in North Korea, we will see that it has hydrogen bombs. It is testing hydrogen bombs on the sea, and it has a lot of military capabilities. They're buying jets from China, but people are dying on the street. People are malnourished. If you look at a North Korean person and if you look at a South Korean person, they're basically the same. But you will identify the differences between a North Korean and a South Korean, because a North Korean person is usually so malnourished that you will right away find out that this person is from North Korea because he is so thin, he is so malnourished, and the signs are on his whole body, his whole face. So this is the kind of fascistic system. And then widespread nepotism and corruption. So corruption is like a fundamental part of fascism. When there is fascism, there is corruption. Because without corruption, fascism cannot prosper. And nepotism is another key factor, because the political person, and you cannot do anything in a fascistic country. You cannot become rich, you cannot become prosperous in a fascistic country if you're not related to the king, if you're not related to the dictator. If you have to be somehow related to the dictator of the fascistic country in order to be successful. So that is another indication of fascism. Suppression of mass media and utilization of government propaganda to stoke fear and anger among the population. So mass media suppression is also another indication. There is no public media, there is no independent media. Only the government propaganda remains in a fascistic country, because they fear the fear that the people will actually learn about the real news and they will reject the fascistic government. So in which countries we will see that the state media is heavily controlled and the independent medias are curtailed, they're not allowed, that country is usually a fascistic country. So fascism requires a charismatic leader to implement its harsh measures upon a people who will suffer immense pain and loss of life for a supposed greater good. So in a fascistic country, people will say that yes, we are suffering, but we are suffering for a greater good. We are suffering for the betterment of our country. But it is usually not true, because you do not need to suffer. You do not need to uh, suffer a hardship in your lifetime so that many generations later some good will come, because we do not know what will be the result of our suffering. We have to ask ourselves, so we are suffering here now, but what is the actual benefit of it, and who is going to actually benefit from it? Are we serving the leader that is only going to enrich himself or herself and her family, or and his family? This is a question the people need to ask themselves. Fascism often pops up in places where democracy has failed and a power vacuum has been created. Fascism thrives in an unstable and divided society. If the society is divided, if the society's people do not trust each other that much, and if the society is in turmoil due to war, due to famine, due to other environmental catastrophe, in that place, democracy will not survive, democracy will not work, and a dictator will arise to rule over them and to exploit them. Dictators are never a good thing. There is there is no benevolent dictator, because human beings are prone to be corrupted, and if you provide a human being with absolute power, that absolute power will corrupt. So if you say that yes, democracy does not properly work here, we are hateful against each other, and we need a benevolent king or a benevolent dictator, that is a wrong assumption, because that person will not remain benevolent when he or she gets the power, because power absolutely corrupts. We need to diversify the power. We need to implement democracy, because without democracy, the people will not have a proper government. The people will not prosper. That country will not prosper. Even though fascist states have failed miserably, their ideas are still popular among religious zealots, xenophobic, and hateful people worldwide. So, usually, the people who are hateful, usually, the people who are skeptical of others, who hate others, they, in general sense, tend to support fascistic ideas, support fascistic rules, and religious zealots, the people that are, mostly religious, these people are usually fascistic in nature, and they support fascistic governments. So we need to counter that. We need to encourage them to open their minds. We need to encourage them to learn more about governments, and learn more about the history of governments, and make them see that whenever fascism has been applied, that country has suffered so much that it had to run a long time by democracy to even call itself a prosperous country. So now let's talk about our last topic of this week, nationalism. Nationalism is a political ideology that puts the interest of the nation, as in a group of people of the same ethnicity, before all else, and promotes the sacrifice of individual rights and liberties for the promotion and protection of national interests. So nationalism is a kind of political ideology, political idea, which states that yes, you belong in a nation and your rights and liabilities come second to the nation itself, because you are only a part of the nation and there are many other people who are part of that group, and this group's rights, this group's interest come first than the individual interest. So this is called nationalism. You have to sacrifice your life if your nation is at threat. This is the responsibility of a nationalist. The ideas of nationalism is based upon the belief that all nations must govern themselves, and it is the nation that should hold the ultimate governing power over the people of that nation. So nationalism says that every nation of in the world has their own powers, has their own sovereignty, and people of the nation should respect their own nations and protect the interest of their own nations. Nationalism is one of the most popular political philosophies in the world. Most countries have political parties that actively promote nationalism and national cohesion. So, in many countries, we'll see there are different parties, different political parties, which have nationalism or nationalistic ideas in their names as well. For example, Bangladesh also has a nationalistic political party which is called Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or BNP. And in many other countries they also have nationalist parties. Nationalism is the idea of uniting a diverse group of people under a common banner and enhancing cooperation and the sense of brotherhood. So in a nation there may be different kinds of people, different races, different sexes, different cultural backgrounds, different religions, but how are they going to be united? In order to be united, they have to have a common feature among them, which is so common, which is so uniting, that they come together to work towards a single goal. And nationalism is that idea. Nationalism says that no matter who you are, no matter which religion you follow, you are a person who belong to a nation, and that nation should prosper if you decide to further its own cause, if you decide to give up your individual rights in some senses to further the cause of your nation, to serve your nation. You are responsible to serve your nation. And however, extreme nationalism can brew hatred towards other nations and cause authoritarian leaders to capture the state power. So if you look at the fascistic states, or if you look at fascism, we will see that fascistic leaders also promote patriotism. They promote nationalism, but actually their intentions are really bad. Their intention is to capture the state power. Their intention is to enrich themselves. They're like parasites. They're like leeches that suck the blood out of the people. And if nationalism or the nationalistic ideas get in such a extreme case that brews hatred against other country, it will cause instability. For example, if we or if our government actively supports the hatred of another country, for example, if say Myanmar, the hatred of Myanmar is so high and the government supports it, and if it goes on for some time, for some years, it is possible that there will be war between the countries, because the people are going to support a war against Myanmar. So war is never a good thing. War will cause immense suffering and loss of lives, loss of property among the people. But the people will say that yes, I am doing this, I am actively participating in the war, I am losing my life because my nation demands it. But does your nation actually demand it, or is it the political leader that demands it to further their own causes? So these are the questions we need to ask ourselves. So now we have talked about three important political ideas: conservatism, fascism, and nationalism. and what they are, how to identify them. And it is up to you to decide which one is actually better for your own country, better for your own society. And if you can manage to bind some of the characteristics of conservatism, fascism, and nationalism together to create a different hybrid political ideology, it is up to you. And it is up to the people of a country to decide which political ideology they are going to take. So I hope you have understood the lecture contents. And if you face any problem understanding the lecture content, please ask in the comment section. I will answer accordingly. And thank you so much for participating in today's class. I hope to see you all in the next class. Thank you.